You recall that I lived in close proximity to Jesus the Christ and the Lady Mary Magdalene. We were certain that the soldiers would be coming soon for him and watched closely for signs of this. It was foretold that Judas Iscariot would be the one to point the way to this, though only four, including Judas, were aware of this. It was an extraordinary gift that he provided, though doubts tormented him throughout much of his lifetime because of it. He was stalwart enough to follow through with the actions necessary to help bring the light of Jesus' abilities out most profoundly. What the world doesn't know about Judas's part was my daughter Martha's role in it. As I have mentioned before, she was very possessive in her admiration of Jesus the Christ and grew dark in her frustrated desires. She was the one who called to Judas and told him he should betray Jesus for the good of the Jews. And it was she who knew when Jesus was at home longer than usual, easing the way for the soldiers to come for him without direct conflict with his followers and disciples. This would be quite helpful in preventing a larger bloodbath and or more examples of betrayal through the fear that would have caused others to back away. Martha saw Judas as an easy target for such manipulation because she felt his attraction for her. She had turned her heart away in despair of ever having Jesus for her own, and in doing so, took vengeful action. As I have said before, those of us of the inner circle, at my own suggestion, allowed her nature to play its course out. We knew the likelihood of her devolving behavior in this way, and also the opportunity for her soul's growth. She was not manipulated. However, as her mother, I chose not to step in where I might have otherwise. And I still held out hope that she would avail herself of a different opportunity, one less difficult for her future. But that was not to be so. And certainly her soul's knowing grew through the option she chose. And all proceeded according to our invested purpose, though we had discussed certain backup plans had these been required. I did not take part in the procession up the hill. I was alone with Martha that day, until such time as I was required elsewhere. Martha shook with the knowing of what she believed she had created. Her suffering was unparalleled because she was unaware of her own role in the grand design. She was to master her own jealousy and envy, and this was a climactic moment for her. I held her with great compassion and with my own regret that my daughter would choose a ruin so harsh for her egoic self, one that would take years for its completion. I knew her suffering well, for I had chosen it with her in a sense. She was of my flesh and bone, and I had forsaken my role of protecting her in order to allow for the greater good that her being had chosen. It was well that I was there to protect her now, to soothe her somewhat from the potential for taking her own life. It would not have gone well. Later, after much of the turmoil had settled down, we spoke quite plainly, she and I, as two women bearing our hearts and souls. She allowed for her own exigencies to participate in this review of our connection together, our roles in the family life. She understood better, after all was said and done, why her experience of Mary was so different from my own, and why I had to take care of them in different manners. It was a tough, slow process for her to recognize her contributions fully, to begin to trust herself, and to make full peace with her own role and that of others in this time period. And she was, at her core, of a very loving nature and wanted to be able to share that with those ones she held close. I sat with her a long time that day as she shook and trembled. Then we both did when the roar of the crowds stopped. It was then I hurried to join some others of our inner circle around the hilltop where Jesus the Christ was on the crucifix. He shone, and as he spoke to the people, the light about him grew and grew till it was almost blinding. He was speaking the truth, the sound of light, and it poured through his being, even as his human life force appeared gradually to subside. It was evident to all gathered that this was a miracle, and that the Son of God was now proclaimed. The moment of his dying was both a solemn and a glorious moment. In keeping with the esoteric practices of our kind, his body was laced with herbs, wrapped a number of times, and prayed over constantly. My Mary Magdalene supervised all such activity and rendered much of the anointing herself. All of us of the inner circle prayed constantly in support of their work together until he had arisen. It was Mary, of course, to whom he showed himself first. I was not there, but I knew inside the moment it occurred, for I felt a ping of completion within me and a letting go of my outpouring of faith onto this relief. It was for her to let the others know of his reacting, and the news spread like a flash. It was imperative that they leave quickly before too many had been told, for he would not be prepared to go through a resurrection again so quickly. They took off under cloak of night to reach the ship that would allow their passing. There were 8 of them in total who left for foreign territories: Jesus the Christ, the Lady Mary Magdalene, Martha, Judas Iscariot, 3 helpers, and my unborn grandchild, just begun in the womb of this dear daughter of mine, heart of my heart, soul of my soul, and teacher to all about her. I witnessed their passing, for I followed covertly in order to avoid any suspicion of their whereabouts, so I might hold them in my arms one last time. Jesus the Christ wept on my shoulder, for he knew as well we would not survive to see one another in this form on the earth plane again. He asked me to represent him well in my earth time remaining, and I chose this as my remaining act of allegiance to our cause, though the main doings of my purpose were now past, and my life was running toward its completion. So I hope you've enjoyed this passage from the Third Mary, 55 Messages for Empowering Truth, Peace, and Grace from the Mother of Mary Magdalene. And if you'd like to hear more, please subscribe to this channel. Namaste and many blessings to you.